listening to Tuff Tiger Talk. Flash Report.
Louisiana State Police have just issued arrest warrants for former LSU football standout Kyren Lacy for several serious offenses, including negligent homicide. The Thibodaux native is accused of causing a crash in Lafourche Parish last month that killed a 78-year-old man and injured two others. Lacy, an LSU wide receiver who just graduated from LSU and has entered the NFL draft, is also being charged with felony hit and run and reckless operation. State police say Lacy was driving a Dodge Charger at a high rate of speed and tried passing other cars in a no passing zone. It caused two different vehicles to collide. A passenger in one of those cars died. Lacy is accused of leaving the scene and not reporting his involvement. We're going to have much more on this breaking news throughout the day. For the WAFBI team, I'm Chris Nakamoto.
All right, shout out to the fam. Appreciate y'all being in this episode of Tuff Tiger Talk. Much love to the fam, man. Some very somber news there, man, as you guys heard the report by Kyren Lacy, fantastic wide receiver from LSU, involved in a negligent homicide with a deadly crash. And this is very somber news for this episode of Tuff Tiger Talk, man. I'm Big Q, and let's get right into it. LSU wide receiver Kyren Lacy wanted by the state police with the deadly crash. This is the latest, as we've seen that the police have issued an arrest warrant for him. He was accused of as you heard the reporter said, that killed a 78-year-old man back in mid-December, then fleeing the scene and giving aid or calling authorities. He will be charged with negligent homicide, felony hit and run, and reckless operation of a vehicle. Police said they have been in contact with Lacy and his attorney to turn himself in. He recklessly passed cars, as you heard, and was illegally passing other vehicles. This is the northbound pickup truck abruptly braked and swerved to the right to avoid a head-on collision with the approaching Dodge vehicle, said the Louisiana State Police. They also added that another car swerved left to avoid that Dodge, and in doing so crossed the center line and crashed head-on with another car traveling south. Lacy drove around the scene and left without stopping to render aid. So Lacy played 2 years with LSU before transferring. Played 2 seasons at Louisiana before transferring to LSU back in 22. 58 passes that he caught for 866 yards, 9 touchdowns this past season, and was declared for the NFL draft 2 days after the crash. Very somber news, man. And this is going to be a tough situation with him facing negligent homicide. Wow. You know, and it's this, we'll see how this all works, man. And, you know, what would be the end result of this is prison time. You have to think about it, right? You know, and, you know, if he's convicted of this, which he more than likely will be, he could result up to 5 years in prison and a fine up to $5,000, according to Louisiana law. So now, of course, you know what negligent homicide is. It's involuntary manslaughter when someone's death is caused by another person's negligent or lack of care. This can include accidents, as we see here, or many other different things. So, if convicted, he could, it could be a prison term up to 5 years and up to $5,000 fine for Kyren Lacy. So we'll keep this story out and open, man. We'll see exactly what happens with this, but this was a very somber thing to hear about the other day. All right, let's jump to the next news. Paul Finebaum, and by the way, condolences to those family of the 70-year-old man that died. Condolences to that family and prayers to that family as well. All right, to the next one. Paul Finebaum takes a jab at LSU football's Brian Kelly following the Notre Dame win. And I would caution Brian Kelly to stop doing these interviews with Paul Finebaum, because he's obviously got a forked tongue. Like Brian Kelly talks to this guy every week. He holds the press conferences for the not the ones during the game day, but the, you know, two a week that he'll do the recap on early of the week, and then the later on in the week press conferences. And right around when he does the start of the week press conferences, he does Finebaum's ESPN show. And Finebaum and him, he always does it every week. He does it with Finebaum, and then Finebaum always seems to kind of jab at him. So I don't know, man. It's kind of a fork tongue thing, kind of a weird situation between the two. But anyway, this is more of the same. Shout out to LSU Tigers. Zach Nagy says Finebaum discussed the evolution of the Notre Dame team, Kelly's previous comments prior to leaving South Bend. Let's investigate, right? LSU head coach Brian Kelly remains in headlines after his former program, Notre Dame, punched its ticket to the national championship on Thursday night. Third-year head coach Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish took down the Penn State Nittany Lions to secure a spot in a title game with a matchup against Ohio State. Now that the national media buzz has been bringing back old quotes from Kelly on his reasoning behind departing South Bend and making his way to Baton Rouge, this was only a matter of time before this happened. Because when I seen them beat Penn State, because I actually had Penn State winning that game. Penn State had it, they just let it go. As SEC Network's Paul Finebaum hopped on ESPN's Get Up on Friday morning when he discussed Kelly in the Fighting Irish college football playoff semifinal victory. The first point of emphasis was congratulating Freeman and company for knocking off a pair of talented teams throughout the college football playoff run. Then he says, well, I'm going to talk about each coach here as well as that's Marcus Freeman. Just an extraordinary job of bringing him back. Finebaum said, I sat here. I was the first one to write them off and say that they're done. So let me compliment Marcus Freeman. But the focus quickly shifted to Kelly and reasoning behind leaving Notre Dame. Then he says this, let me also go back 3 years to another point in time. Notre Dame hasn't been in a national championship game since 2012. That's when Brian Kelly, lost by 28 points to Alabama in Miami. Finebaum said, I just couldn't help but think that Brian Kelly's 3 years ago, said, I'm leaving Notre Dame because I want to win the national championship. And the only place I can do that is LSU. And here's Marcus Freeman, who was his assistant briefly, and now he's brought his team back, and so much credit to him and amazing staff. I'll let my friends here talk about the players that made the difference, but it was an amazing thing to watch. So there you go with that. And he also says Freeman has now punched his ticket to the national championship game, did Kelly during his tenure with the Fighting Irish. For Finebaum, he also dove into the Notre Dame's fan base and how the program is now becoming likable. Throughout the course of history, Notre Dame has been the most hated team in America. They're not anymore, said Finebaum. Marcus Freeman has made them likable. I mean, I was with them last week in New Orleans, and fans are cheering. They're the underdog. I just didn't think I would live long enough to watch Notre Dame in this likable underdog role. So he also, Finebaum stated that how the Fighting Irish will be the underdog no matter who the foe is, without challenging an opponent next. But now Freeman is evolving quickly as a head coach. So that's a few things that you hit old Finebaum throw at Coach Kelly. You knew that was coming. Last time those people were even relevant was Brian Kelly was there. But the crazy part about LSU, they could have won either way. Remember, Freeman was a guy that LSU actually interviewed. They tried to bring Marcus Freeman on the team, but not as a head coach. I think he was the LSU was trying to bring him in as a defensive coordinator. Remember that? They interviewed him to bring him in here, but he said, nah, I'm gonna go back home there. And then we ended up getting Brian Kelly. Now, Brian Kelly's not, this was a horrible season, probably the worst season that he's had recently, like in his last 10 years, as being a college football coach. Brian Kelly's always been a guy that had strong teams. This year's team, not so much. But you can see this year cracks in his armor insofar as him getting to the point where he was pissed off, pounding on the table, and then lost the first loss of the season, losing those games to Alabama, really going after players, going after the coaches. And then after the season was over, after he lost the recruit, the number one college quarterback to Michigan, he just went on a hell tour to try to get to tear up the transfer portal. He hit the portal hard. They had the #1 transfer portal class, bringing in pass rushers, offensive linemen, tight ends, wide receivers. They were doing a quarterback. They were doing, just went there, even the damn punter. So they went there tearing it up to try to gain prominence, to get those college veterans in here to help LSU get back to respectability. And he even started using verbiage in terms of championship and all that. And that's what you got to do. You can't beat around it like we've seen with a lot of worthless programs. Like if you watch the Pelicans or the Saints like we do, they beat around. They don't want to say the championship term. They don't want to use stuff like that because it puts too much pressure on them for them to do their damn jobs, is which we want them to do. But Coach Kelly, despite this horrible season, he was still able to recruit, bring a strong class along with the recruits from the 25 class that he has here, which were pretty good. Outside of losing Underwood to Michigan, they still had a strong class. They still have the #1 running back there. They have several really top-notch wide receivers that add to the pool. That LSU wide receiver is going to be good. They're looking good in the secondary. They're going to add some more people as well. And they're going to continue to attack that thing. And the NIL situation, they've really ratcheted that up as well. So LSU's moving in the right direction. And I can only say that I don't think Notre Dame wins the national championship. I think Ohio State knocks them off, but still in all, that within itself should be, outside of the motivation of the shitty season that we had this year, should be able to propel LSU to some really strong emotions coming up. You know, they're getting Nussmeier back and all that other talent. We'll see exactly how far they could press, but LSU is really putting their foot on it this year. They're trying to get that championship. So we'll see if Brian Kelly can make that happen. And speaking of Brian Kelly and his classes, as we move from the Finebaum topic to LSU football dishing out multiple offers to priority recruits. This is also Zach Nagy putting in good work. Kelly and company are attacking the 2026 recruiting class, extending scholarships to key targets in that cycle. Coach Kelly and the football staff remains focused on building up the program for the long haul. In their efforts beginning to ramp up the 2026 class, Kelly and company hold 6 commitments in next year's cycle to this point, with an emphasis on Louisiana. But the staff is now extending their focus nationally. This week, LSU dished out over a handful of new offers to priority targets in the 2026 cycle. Well, who are these guys, right? Brandon Arlington, which is the #1 athlete in America. He's from California. Mount Michael 5-star athlete Brandon Arlington remains one of the most coveted recruits in America, as becomes a household name prior to his senior campaign. The top two-way prospect in next year's class is reeled in nearly 40 college offers, with LSU entering the mix on Tuesday. So there you go. Drawing out there. That's going to be interesting to see if he fight. But once again, it just goes to show you how far does LSU take it. So this will be interesting to get him. Now, this guy had hauled in 48 catches for almost 1,000 yards. He averages 20 yards per catch, had 11 touchdowns. Then on the other side of the ball, he logged in 51 tackles, 3 pass breakups, an interception, a forced fumble recovery across the last 2 seasons. Like the Travis Henry effect, I guess, or the Desmond situation. Could that be that could be something that's really popularized, especially if he goes like top 3. You can see a lot of athletes doing that, and it gives them versatility. It gives them, ups their chances of sticking with a team, having wide receiver here or there. Jake Fett, the #5 quarterback in America from Texas. Del Valle quarterback Jake Fett has become a big-time name in the 26 class, as he gets he's a current Arizona State commitment, but he has offers from Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and other programs. Now LSU's offensive coordinator Joe Sloan has extended a scholarship offer to Fett, with the Tigers in the mix. Now he's 6'1", about 190 pounds. He committed to Arizona State in September, but has stopped the who's who of college football from remaining in contact. So we'll see what this kid can do. He threw for over 2,400 yards, 27 touchdowns against 5 picks, and he also ran for 340 yards with 13 rushing touchdowns. He's tossed for 25, 32, and also added 589 yards, 11 more scores on the ground, while showing his mobility at the quarterback position. So Arizona State is there. So We'll see what happens there. But other offers are LaDerrick Brunson, the 4-star linebacker, Christian Ward, the 4-star wide receiver, Dre Quinn, which is a 3-star edge rusher, and Dalton Toothman, which is one of the coveted offensive linemen LSU is looking at. That's some of the recruits that they're trying to hit at, but these are some of the commitments already on the 2026 books. Richard Anderson, number 2 defensive lineman in America, pledged to the Tigers back in 2024. 5-star all-state honors, 44 tackles, 15 tackles, 15 tackles for loss. He has 10 sacks, 18 QB hurries, and he pledged to LSU in the 26 recruiting class to this point. So number 2 in America in the 26 class. They also have the number 4 safety in America. You know, that's Aiden Hall, who pledged this year's for the 2026 class. Another solid defensive back, 38 tackles, 12 for lost tackles, 4 sacks, 4 picks, 11 pass breakups. He has 4 punt blocks and 2 fumble recoveries. One of the top safeties in America. LSU will be battling down the stretches for his service. Always good to get a really good, the second best defensive line prospect in the country in the top 4 safety on the same defense. Looking good. Jalen McCoy, the number 8 defensive lineman in America, another top 100 recruit, wrapped up an impressive campaign out of Florida. He is the Under Armour All-American game top guy there. He committed to Kelly and LSU over USC and Tennessee. It's a big guy right there. 6'7", 250-pounder. Had 120 tackles with 31.5 tackles for a loss and 15 sacks across 3 seasons of football. Kenny Darby, the 4-star wide receiver, another wide receiver that's pretty good, a 5A All-Star team, logging 100 catches, over 1,700 with 24 touchdowns. He remains high on the heading into this season. 6 foot, 175, twitchy speedster, which is a guy that pledged right away. Ja'Kai Anderson, 4-star wide receiver from Louisiana as well. 57 catches, almost 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns. Swiss Army knife style player who also rushed for 151 and 4 touchdowns on 16 carries. Also a kick returner, had 518 yards, 7 touchdowns on kick and punt returns. And he's also one of those do-it-all kind of guys. And then you have Jalen Chapman, 3-star offensive lineman, 3-star prospect out of New Orleans. He pledged to the Tigers over Alabama, USC, Georgia, and Tennessee, among others. He's 6'3", 270 pounds following his junior year at Warren Easton after gaining national attention following his sophomore campaign in 2023. That is currently the 2026 commitments as LSU looks to aggressively build that class. Now, this class will grow as 25 season comes in. And Kelly really could take LSU and place them in national prominence. That'll blow up a lot of stuff. Like I said, this season had LSU won several games and kind of played with power and poise toward the back end of the season. I know they finished the season on a 3-game winning streak, but losing to the Crimson Tide the way they did, losing to the Aggies, losing to the Crimson, losing to Florida. I mean, you should have beat the Aggies. That should have been a win. You have no business losing to the Gators. Even to a degree, I can see losing to to Alabama, but not losing to them to that bad. But they did finish the year on a 3-game winning streak. But just imagine if they picked up wins against the Aggies and the Gators, how radically different things could have been. Like, dealing with the quarterback that switched to Michigan, despite the fact that the NIL deal, I think they offered them several million more than what LSU did. Well, this year's the philosophy switch has been major league different in terms of how LSU's handling this thing going forward. And they're all the way in on it, man. So like I said, man, we'll see how it all progressed, but they've put together a pretty respectable 2025 class. Coach Kelly's going into this season pissed off with a mission. Can we get a chip this year? I don't know. We'll see what's going on. Brian Kelly need to become Brian Chip Kelly, if you know what I mean. And Chip is short for championship for the upcoming season. We'll see how it all works. But anyway, that'll do it for this episode of Tuff Tiger Talk. Y'all do me a service. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. By all means, feel free to share the show on your social media feed. Big Q representing the LSU Fighting Tiger Nation, man. Listen, I appreciate y'all, and I'm going to holler at y'all on the next one. Much love. Go Tiger.